Karen Anderson was in a completely different world when a man with a member much larger than usual gave her pleasure. She had already experienced several climaxes since she entered that motel room about an hour ago, and in her opinion, all of them were much better than anything she had ever experienced with Cale, with whom she lived for 10 years. Any guilt she felt for cheating on her husband was soon eclipsed by a feeling of pleasure. In fact, Karen wasn't even sure why she was doing this. Everything was fine between her and Cale. He always treated her like a queen, pampered her, bought her gifts and flowers spontaneously just to say, "I love you," and make love. Everything between them was good, although it had decreased a bit lately. They had 2 wonderful children, and overall, everything was great. But for some strange reason, she decided to give herself to John. Maybe it was the months she spent seducing herself in the office. Or maybe it was the gossip she heard about John's giant member from the other women in the office. Maybe it was all those things together. At first, she worried about how it would affect her marriage and family, but all of that disappeared when she entered the room. Now, all that mattered was absorbing as much as she could from this man in the little time they would spend together, even if that meant getting pregnant by him. At that moment, all thoughts of Cale had flown out of her mind. There was no longer any feeling of guilt. Just the need for another moment. She thought she would make it up to her clueless husband. Maybe she would even teach him how to do what John had done to her. After all, the man who was now unconscious in the bed of that cheap motel room had made her experience an incredible moment. She lay back in bed next to her, and the 2 lovers fell asleep in each other's arms. The clock struck 8:30, which gave her enough time to clean up and go back home. She told Cale that they would work late, but that she would be home by 10:30 at the latest. The motel was only half an hour away by car, so she had plenty of time to clean up and return home to her husband. She looked at the other side of the bed and noticed that John had already left. She didn't remember him leaving, and it seemed strange that he went home with his wife without saying anything. She decided to tell him everything she thought when she saw him in the office the next day. She also noticed that John's side of the bed looked as if no one had been there. Strange person, she thought, but decided that he was probably as neat as he was talented. She went into the bathroom, examined herself, and noticed that, apart from slight swelling between her legs, there were no visible marks. That was good, she thought, since she didn't want to explain bruises or strange marks on her body. She showered for a long time, using 2 vaginal rinses to clean herself as much as possible. She didn't want to risk bringing John's bodily fluids to Cale's house, at least not yet. After carefully examining herself, she put on her work clothes again and prepared to leave, taking a last look around to make sure she didn't forget anything. Karen dropped the room key and then looked around to make sure no one knew her. The only person who noticed was a rather strange man in an old-fashioned gray suit standing on the corner and looking at her. He seemed familiar in some way, but she couldn't remember him. He held a cigarette in one hand and the other in his pocket. However, what surprised her was the lack of natural color. He looked like a character straight out of a 1960s black and white TV show. She returned to her car, got in, and noticed that the interior was covered in dust and smelled musty, as if the car had been inactive for a long time. It's strange. Just hours ago, everything was different, she thought. She lowered the window to ventilate and tried to start the car. At first, it didn't start, but after stepping on the accelerator a few times, it came to life, and black smoke came out of the exhaust pipe. She stepped on the accelerator a few more times to make sure the car was running, making a mental note to ask her husband to check it in the morning. She headed home, wondering if Cale would notice any change in her. Let's hope he doesn't even notice, she thought. She arrived home a few minutes before 10 and saw 2 strange cars in her driveway. This is strange, she thought. Cale didn't mention anything about having company. The house also seemed a bit different. All the curtains were wrong, and the landscaping had changed completely. Of course, Cale couldn't have done all this in one day, and certainly not without consulting her first, she thought. She double-checked the address to make sure she was at the right house. Then she parked on the street. He has some explaining to do, she told herself. She got out of the car and entered the house, noticing that everything was wrong. There were strange furniture pieces in the living room. All her photos and cherished items were gone, replaced. And to make matters worse, There was an older black couple sitting on the couch, staring at her strangely. "Who are you, and why are you in my house?" Karen asked. The man stood up and looked at Karen strangely. "I'm Alger Hinson," he said. "And this is my wife, Amanda," he added, pointing to the attractive woman sitting next to him. "Who could you be, miss, and why are you in our house?" "My name is Karen Anderson, and I have lived in this house with my husband, Cale, for the past 8 years. She said, "I don't understand what's happening, miss. I think you should leave now." She said, "We bought this house from Mr. Anderson a year ago, after his divorce was finalized." "Divorce?" Karen asked. "What kind of divorce?" "I was here this morning with my husband before I left for work when he started approaching Karen. Miss, I really think you should leave before I have to call the police." "Yes, please call the police," said Karen. "Something is going on here, and I intend to get to the bottom of this. This must be one of Cale's jokes." Al took his phone and dialed 911. After speaking to the dispatcher, he hung up and spoke to Karen. "The police will be here in a few minutes," he said. "You can sit down if you want to wait here," he added, pointing to the deep chair next to the sofa. Karen sat down, wondering what she should do next. She took out her smartphone and suddenly realized that it was dead. This was strange, since she always kept it charged so that Cale or her children could contact her at any time. "Sorry to bother you, but can I use your phone to call my husband?" Karen asked. "Of course, no problem," said Al, handing her his phone. Karen dialed Cale's number from memory, but received a message saying the number was no longer in use. Distressed, she tried calling her parents, but got the same response. She also tried calling Cale's parents, but received a quick, busy signal. Discouraged and with no options, she returned the phone to Al. "Are you saying you bought this house a year ago from my husband?" Karen asked. Al nodded. "Yes, we did," he said. "He sold it to us at a very good price and said it was due to a divorce." "Did he say anything about why he was getting divorced?" Amanda asked. "He talked about a woman who was cheating on him as a wife," he said, looking at Karen with suspicion. Karen was shocked. How could he have figured this out so soon after their first date with Cale? Poor man. I could see he was heartbroken, and these poor children really made me feel bad. By this point, Karen was already crying. Her life and marriage had crumbled without her even knowing it. Shortly afterward, a police car with flashing lights stopped in front of the house. 2 police officers appeared at the door. Al spoke to them first, then invited them inside. Karen stood up when they entered. "Please show us some identification, miss," one of the officers said. Karen opened her purse and took out her driver's license. The officer looked at it, then turned to Karen. "Is this some kind of joke, ma'am?" he asked. "This license is blank." "What?" Karen asked, looking at the driver's license. The laminated card the officer held was completely blank. There wasn't even a photograph underneath the laminate. "Do you have any other identification?" the officer asked. "I have something in my purse," said Karen. But when she opened her purse, she found that all her other cards were completely blank. "I don't understand," she said. "There should be credit cards, an ATM card, my social security card, but they are all blank." "Can you at least tell us your name?" another officer asked. "Maybe there's something in the system." "Of course," said Karen. "My name is Karen Anderson, and I live at W. Highland Park Road with my husband. I work as a legal assistant at Jenkins Law Firm in downtown. Surely someone there can vouch for me." The officers looked at each other before returning their attention to Karen. "Did you say Karen Anderson, ma'am?" the second officer asked. "Yes," she said. "You spell it K-R?" he said. "Ma'am, you'll have to come with us to the station so we can confirm your identity," the first officer said. "We apologize for interrupting your night, guys," said Al. The officers took Karen to the police car and put her in the back seat. After locking her inside, one of the officers approached Karen's car and rummaged through the glove compartment, pulling out some documents. They drove silently to the police station, where they took Karen's fingerprints and led her to what appeared to be an interrogation room. Half an hour later, the door opened, and an undercover detective entered the room with a folder in his hands. He sat down in front of Karen and placed the folder in front of him. He went through all the preliminary procedures, informing her of her rights and assuring her that she was not a suspect in any crime. All I want to do is confirm your identity. Is that okay? He asked. Karen nodded. You said your name was Karen Anderson, right? He asked. Yes, she said. And you told our officers that you live at 1550 W. Highland Park Road with your husband Cale, he added. That's correct, she said. You also said you work at Jenkins' law firm as a legal assistant, right? He asked. Yes, that's true, Karen said. We have a little problem here, Miss Anderson, said the detective. Let's start with the fact that your fingerprints don't exist. I don't mean they're not in the system. I mean you don't have fingerprints. It seems like they weren't even removed with acid. They simply don't exist. And that's not all. We checked the records for this address and found that it was bought by Allie Amanda Jorgensen a year ago from Cale Anderson. According to court records, the house was sold as part of a divorce settlement between Cale and Karen Anderson. Karen was shocked. What was all this about the divorce? But I'm still married to my husband. I saw him this morning. I don't understand how this is possible, she said between tears. Look, miss, I'm just going by what the court records say. Please tell me, where were you tonight? Asked the detective. I was at the Gaslight Motel, room 117, she said quietly. And what were you doing there? He asked. I was, with a man, she said, looking at the ground. What did you do with this man? The detective asked. We were, having fun, she said. Making love, right? He asked. Karen nodded her head. Yes, she said. And can you identify the man you were with? Yes, she said. Hawkins, my boss at the law firm. I see, said the detective. Have you gotten used to cheating on your husband? Karen, looking shocked, said, No, I don't know. It was the first and last time, I promise. Interesting, said the detective. The file we have on you includes a very detailed report from a local private investigator hired by your ex-husband. According to the report, the investigator saw you with Mr. Hawkins several times at the same motel over the course of several months. Would you like to reconsider your statement? Karen shook her head. No, that's wrong, she said. I went there with him only once. Today. The detective sighed and leaned back in his chair, looking at Karen. Miss, I happen to know the main partners at Jenkins. I called this afternoon, and they told me that Karen Anderson and her supervisor, Mr. Hawkins, were fired almost a year ago for violating the company's anti-nepotism policy, he said. But that's not all. He took a photograph from the folder and placed it on the table in front of her. The photo showed a woman lying on a hotel bed with her eyes open and her face gray. The woman looked exactly like Karen, and to make matters worse, she was wearing the same outfit Karen had on. Her eyes went wide, and she raised her hand to her mouth in shock. This photograph was taken about 3 months ago, miss, said the detective. According to the officers who responded, Karen Anderson, 150 Highland Park Road, was found dead in room 117 of the Gaslight Motel 3 months ago. An autopsy revealed that Mrs. Anderson died from an overdose of sleeping pills, apparently taken with large amounts of alcohol. Now, miss, can you explain how a woman who looks and dresses exactly like the woman found dead in a motel room 3 months ago is now walking on my property? He asked. And how did you end up in the same room where this woman died? Karen shook her head in shock. No, this can't be, she exclaimed. I'm not dead. I'm right here. I don't know what's going on. Please help me. At least tell me where my family is. Please. I can't contact anyone. Well, miss, I don't know where Mr. Anderson is now, but I understand that he moved out of town after your divorce. It's also known that your in-laws died shortly after Mrs. Anderson's body was found, he said. Oh my God, no. Please, tell me my parents are still alive, she begged, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, if you really are Mrs. Anderson's ex-wife, and I'm not ready to admit it, then I can't honestly talk to you about that, he said, leaving Karen in a state of hysteria. Miss, I think you need professional help, he said. I'll call the county behavioral center and have you taken to their facilities until we sort all of this out. He pulled out his phone. Karen shook her head. No, please don't do this. I don't know what's going on. You have to believe me. Let me talk to my husband at least. I can't do that, miss. I don't even know who you really are. You look just like the late Mrs. Anderson. You dress like her. You seem to know intimate details about her life. You even drove Mrs. Anderson's car, although I'm not sure how you managed to start it after it had been there for so long. By the way, the registration plates on that car expired a long time ago, so I'll be confiscating it until you can prove ownership and update the registration. At this point, I think you need to talk to a mental health professional, he said. Please stay here, he added as he walked out the door. Karen rested her head on the table, sobbing. This shouldn't have happened, she thought. Of course her husband will come to save her. The door opened, and two large men in strange coats entered the room. As they began to put it on her, Karen realized they were putting a straitjacket on her and started to struggle. No, please don't do this, she said. No, oh no, she screamed over and over. But the men continued to dress her until she could no longer move her arms. She screamed as one of the men injected something into her neck. Within seconds, her world was consumed by darkness. Thursday, May 12, 2016, 11:30 a.m. Wake up, darling, said a masculine voice. Wake up. You're okay. Karen slowly opened her eyes and saw her husband's face. Karen, you had a nightmare, but it's over now. Wake up, darling, he said. As Karen's mind slowly pulled away from the dream, she realized she was in her bed with her husband. Cal. She instantly threw her arms around his neck and covered his face with kisses. Oh my God, Cal, is it really you? She asked. Of course, silly. Who else would be in our bed? He replied. Hold me, Cal, please, she cried. I missed you so much. Cal hugged his wife, crying as hard as he could. He loved hugging this beautiful woman, but he thought, what is she talking about? I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere, he said. You better not go anywhere, she said, calming down a little. Karen looked at her husband. Cal, I have something to confess, and I'm afraid you're going to be really mad at me. He looked at her with concern. Cal, I almost made a terrible mistake, she said. Almost? He asked. Cal, please don't hate me, but I have to tell you this. You know we promised never to keep secrets from each other, no matter how bad they were. Yes, dear. I know you can talk to me about anything. You know that, right? He asked. Karen nodded. Yes, I know, but it's bad. Have you met my boss, John Hawkins? Cale knew him well. They had met at a Christmas party for a law firm, and Cale could tell he was a well-dressed man who considered himself a gift from God to women basically, a legend in his own imagination. Cale also knew he was trying to put his hands and other private parts on Karen. Yes, I remember well, said Cale. He's been trying to get me to stay after work for a while, except he doesn't want to work. You know what I mean, she said. You mean he wants to get handsy? Said Cale. I get that, he said. You're a beautiful woman. What sane man wouldn't want to be with you? If we weren't married, I'd be flirting with you myself. What I don't like is that he knows you're married. Yeah, well, he wanted us to meet at a motel to be together, she said, looking down. Ah, yeah, said Cale, his mood darkening. And you agreed? No, I didn't, she said. But actually, I didn't reject it either. I just dodged it a little. But wait, he wants to see me tomorrow. I can't do it, but I'm afraid it'll affect my job if I don't. Well, I assure you, it'll affect our marriage if you do this. And yes, it could also affect your job, said Cale. You know I won't tolerate infidelity, and your company has strict rules that prohibit adultery. Both of you could be fired. And if I divorced you... I know, she said. I haven't done anything with him yet, but I'm scared. I know he's been with a lot of other girls from the office, and they all say he's a nice guy who uses things to get his way. You believe me, right? Of course I believe you, said Cale. You forget that we've been married for 10 years, and we knew each other for 5 years before that. You've never been able to keep anything from me, and the guilt will eat you alive. Speaking of that, I noticed you've been a little off lately. At first, I thought it was just work, but now I think it's the real reason, right? Karen lowered her eyes and nodded. Yes, she said softly. I've been thinking about it a lot over the last 2 days. I don't want to lose my job, but I couldn't live without you, and I couldn't live with myself if I hurt you and the kids. So, what should I do? You're kidding, right? Cale asked. You're a smart, educated woman, Karen. Do you really need to ask? Or do you want me to explain it to you? You don't have to do this. Cal, I guess I just needed some validation, she said. I know what I'll do first, she said, getting up from the bed. She went to her closet and took out a dress she was planning to wear the next day. It was a beautiful dress that fell just above her knees. It wasn't ostentatiously attractive, but it still showed off her curves. Well, she took it from the closet and threw it in the trash. I don't ever want to see that dress again, she said. Cale looked surprised. It was a pretty expensive dress, he said. Are you sure you want to do this? Karen sat on the bed. Yes, she said. Tomorrow, I'll tell John no. Not just no, but no way. Then I'll request a transfer to another department. Maybe my salary will be reduced, but I don't care. If they don't accept it, I'll quit. Our marriage is more important to me, and I'll do anything to keep us together. Can you forgive me someday? Of course I can, said Cale. I'm a little upset that you didn't say no to that man right away, but at least now you're doing the right thing. Karen hugged her husband as if her life depended on it. I can't believe I was so stupid, Cal. Please, hug me and tell me you love me, she said. Cal hugged her and kissed her forehead. Of course I love you, Karen, and I always have, he said. But I think we need to have a serious conversation about this after you calm down. Maybe even seek counseling. I can't believe you were so trusting as to fall for him like that. I get it, said Karen. I promise this will never happen again, she said. She looked at the TV on the wall opposite the bed and saw him, the man she had seen on the street corner in her nightmare. Cal, who is that man on the TV? She asked. This is Rod Serling, darling. They're having a marathon of the Twilight Zone. Why do you ask? I saw him before, but I didn't know who he was, she said. How is that possible? He died in 1975, said Cale. I know, Karen said. He was in my nightmare. Actually, he didn't do anything. He just stood there, watching. It was in black and white, just like on TV, and it was. Simply, I don't know. Strange, she said. Interesting, Cale said. One day, you'll have to tell me about this dream. Cale got out of bed and headed for the door. I'm going downstairs to grab something. Do you want something? Coke? Water? I want water, please, she said. After Cale left the bedroom, Karen thanked the heavens for the dream she had had. She suddenly realized she had almost entered the twilight zone of betrayal. Are you still here? Interesting. In that case, I suggest you subscribe to this channel, leave a like, and comment on where in the world you listened to this story from. Let's see where everyone is from.